Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Muhi Khwaja. Thank you so much for joining today on the Muslim Philanthropy Podcast. We have Aneesa Muthana, who is with us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Mahi.
Of course. Aneesa is the CEO and co-owner of Pioneer Service and also M&M Quality Grinding, a family business that she will be sharing a lot more about. She also has been committed to work around manufacturing, being part of different professional groups and entities there. But she and I had the opportunity to meet through the Allied Muslim Chamber of Commerce. And I've also known of Aneesa's work in philanthropy. So wanted to give her an opportunity to share a little bit more about that. But the most important part of her bio that she shared with me is that she is a grandmother of five.
Alhamdulillah.
So thank you so much again for, your time today and looking forward to having a conversation around what makes you you. So would love to have you share in your words kind of your journey, your personal background, family background, and then we can get into the philanthropic stuff as well.
Yeah. So my parents came from Yemen back in the 60s. My dad came in the early 60s, and my mom came in 1969. Uh, my father worked as a dishwasher, was promoted to busboy, and also worked as a machinist. And so he saved his money. My mom arrived from Yemen with no formal education, no education at all, literally from a village called Yafa to Chicago, and right away got a job in a factory when it was dark, dirty, grimy. So those are very humble beginnings, and the two people that have paved the way for me and inspired me to work in manufacturing. That's how it started. And so
Very
currently
impressive.
I'm the CEO of Pioneer Service and M&M Quality Grinding. And a little bit of background there. My parents opened up M&M Quality Grinding back in 1981. I was the prime age of 11, grinding, cleaning, filing, and later on when I was 13, talking to customers and running machines with my brothers. And a lot of people see that as, oh my God, that must have been hard. And it was actually wonderful, and made me who I am today and really taught me about work ethics and taught me about not just the value of the dollar, but also just how to stay humble, really. Like, I think that's one thing my parents taught all of us is humility, and not just by telling us to be humble, but really leading by example. And unfortunately, or fortunately, really depends on who you talk to. At the age of 23, working for the family business was extremely challenging. The dynamics of a
Mhm.
family business, along with being really the only girl. My brothers were older than I was. I was 23. I was a recent single mom of two. And I would like go into the shop and guys would whistle at me literally. And so it was just very,
Not knowing you were the
yeah,
family's
they
daughter
knew.
or
They
wow,
they
even
they knew. It was
yeah,
bad. And it was unapologetically. It wasn't even like, oh my God, like it was just like what's the big deal? And although I did not wear hijab back then, that is not to justify anybody
right,
being treated that way. But anyway, it wasn't just that. It was just that. It was always compounding. It was just like, where's your brother? What would you know? And
hmm,
one time my brother was out sick, and I just remember asking someone to do something, and he just gave me such a bad attitude. And I was just tired of having to, you know, like be always known as daddy's little girl, or like I'm gonna go tell my parents, or I'm gonna go tell my brother. I was just tired of it. And that's not how my parents raised me. So I left without a plan B. And I don't recommend this for people, but
hmm,
for me, I feel like I had a combination of just a lot of determination and a lot of tawakkul. Like I wasn't quote unquote as religious as I am today, but I did have a lot of faith and just knowing when you do the right thing, things will just fall into place.
right.
And my uncle actually had a business, Pioneer Service, and he had asked me to come, but I said no way because the intent was to compete with my family. So he reached out to me again, and I told him, I just have one condition. And he's like, whatever you need. And my uncle and I were are and still are, even after 32 years, this was 93, very close. And so he wanted me there. So I said, as long as you're my silent partner, I will do all the work, and I'll figure it out. And he was like, well, how can I go wrong there? Because he really trusted me and he nurtured me and empowered me and just believed in me more than I actually believed in myself. And
Mm,
so I left the family business and I went into machining instead of grinding. My family does grinding. And being that I went into machining, we weren't competitors. We would be considered a customer.
sure.
And like I said, figured it out. And although it's all under the umbrella of manufacturing, it's a much different sector in manufacturing. But yeah, we became successful. In 2014, we became very high tech. All of our machines are CNC machines, very clean. We've always had a clean shop, but really clean, like the terminologies like 5S, 6S, the lighting, ESG is another terminology, very important to the environment, social, and
Hmm.
governance. So we check off all the boxes, not because we have to, but because we care and because that's the type of shop we are. Now, fast forward 2021, my father was ready to retire, and my brothers couldn't afford to buy him out, and they didn't want an outsider coming in. So my brothers and my mom came to me asking me if I would come back. I chuckled. I said, "That's funny. No, thank you. I'm good." Right over here, and they were persistent, especially my mom. And as Muslims, we know Rada al-Walidain is very important. And my
Sure.
father's Rada, his approval in getting his payout, and then my mom's approval, not allowing someone else to take over the legacy that they built. But I knew it was going to be a lot of work, and I knew also the same dynamics I was walking into that I left back in 93. Some of the same employees were still here, and I knew that the checks and balances, and I would say no disrespect to my brothers, they worked really hard, but the clean shop, the locking it down processes, it wasn't here, and I knew that. So I
Hmm.
knew that it was going to be very challenging. So I told my mom and my brothers, and I even had my uncle with me. And I said, I'm going to give you guys the same condition I gave him back in 1993, silent partners. And they're like, where can we go wrong? He's done well for himself.
Yeah.
And so they agreed, but it was a little bit more formal on this side because, with documents, non-voting rights versus voting rights. So we put all that into place. My mom was happy to do that for me. My brothers were happy to give me the responsibility and kind of retire, which they have. And it's been 4 years. And honestly, I am honored, to lead this company. And we've made significant changes, a much cleaner shop. I moved both my companies under one roof, a total of 132,000 square feet.
Hmm.
M&M has 70,000, Pioneer has 62,000. It's two separate entities because my Amana with my uncle and my Amana with my siblings and mother are separate. So I don't want to mix the two, although we support each other, but we don't,
Right.
but there obviously has to be checks and balances. And alhamdulillah, it's going very well. Everyone in my family is ecstatic about it. They came to visit not too long ago. They saw the improvements. Now we have implemented ESG on the M&M side. It's very clean. The air, you could walk in and not know machines were running. And that wasn't the case when I walked in September 1st, 2021.
Mm. And even doing that transition through COVID as well, some of those protocols, I'm sure, added some layers of complexity to the situation. Um, all these years later in business, as somebody who is identifiable as a Muslim woman, I would imagine, you talked a little bit earlier about how, it didn't really matter just being a woman in these scenarios was almost as a disadvantage where people were double guessing you, undermining you. So what do you feel changed from the 90s to the 2000s when you kind of took over again?
Yeah, so if I were to be completely honest, not much has changed.
Mm,
The industry in itself, there are more women, but hearing their stories resonate to me because sometimes you feel like you're the only one. You're the only one facing these challenges and you don't want to complain about them. You don't want to be the victim, right? But then you realize there's a pattern and you realize that sometimes it's because you're the only woman, you're the only brown person, you're the only hijabi. What I've overcome, and I touched on this a little bit already, is, people ask me, where do I get my confidence from? And I'm like, what's the worst that could happen? If I'm okay with Allah and Allah is okay with me, what's the worst that they can do to me? Like, I
mm,
lose a job, I lose a customer, like, so what? Like, we move on and we go to the next and we work hard. I'm a big believer in tawakkul, but I'm also a big believer in tying our camel, which would
right,
mean doing the work and showing up and leading by example. And, I don't care what, acronyms are behind my name, whether it's a degree or a title. I could be CEO all day long, but I'm also in charge of the livelihood of my team and their families, and they're counting on me making right decisions. And if I'm in a corner crying because somebody didn't accept me, or if I'm in the corner crying saying, like, I didn't get this job because I'm brown, I didn't get this job because I'm a woman, they didn't allow me in this room because of this, well, there's plenty of other rooms. We are in the
sure,
we are in America, and although right now it's disgraceful what they're doing out there in the streets, and
yeah,
there's no justification there. But overall, I would say in this country, it is the land of opportunity. There is no reason why we cannot find success. So I could wake up every morning and say, I'm wearing my hijab and everybody's going to treat me badly. And I'm just going to I'm going to call it a day. And that's just setting myself up for victimhood and failure, where I get up every day and I walk into a room, and this is what I tell my grandchildren: walk into a room like you own the building, like the
mm,
building belongs to you, but be the most humble person in the room. Don't walk into a room second guessing yourself, because if you're second guessing yourself, if you're already telling yourself that someone's going to treat you badly, you can call it manifesting, you can call it you're putting it out there, whatever term you want to use, you're literally setting yourself up for that. So plenty of opportunities. There's a lot of good people. I joke all the time. I'm like, old white men have become my best friends. We have so much in common. We do. I always
yeah,
joke, I'm like, we like big machines, we like processes, we like, manufacturing, and that is my circle. And I've gained a lot of respect, and a lot of men have my respect. Mind you, some of them were ignorant and, you know, uh, overcome that, and some of them aren't worth me even looking in their direction, and I
sure.
won't. Does that
You
answer
mentioned
the
there
question?
was a manufacturing board or that you sit on as well. Can you share a little bit more about the dynamic there and kind of what you've been able to learn in those boardrooms that many people in our community maybe don't have access to?
Sure. So I actually, ironically, have IMA on, Illinois Manufacturing Association, which is our state here. I'm on the board there, and I'm a big fan of Mark Densler and his team, and have been on the board for a few years now. I've been on several boards. VIA is another association for manufacturing. PMPA is a big one. It's a national association, which, is Precision Machining Products Association. I ended up becoming the chairperson, in their 100 years or 96 years or so. They only had one other woman, and then it was me. And
Oh,
many times I'm the only woman in the room. And then there's also the National Association of Manufacturing. You have like the president of Dow, the vice president of Johnson and Johnson. Like, those are really big names, big companies, and understanding that you go into the room very humble, knowing how big those manufacturers are, and but you're rubbing shoulders with them. You get to hear their ideas, their perspectives, and then also they value yours because not everyone understands as a small manufacturer, especially in the machining industry, not everybody has that insight to our challenges and the processes that we've figured out that might even help big companies and cultures that we've built, that we've been able to build because we're smaller, and inspire others. I've had many conversations with HR people that work worth like hundreds of millions of dollars or even $1 billion company that have learned from me and vice versa.
Mhm.
I'm there rubbing shoulders with the best of the best. And again, like it's very humbling and very inspiring. And I go with my eyes and ears open. And really, it's about how to treat people, processes, tax incentives, things of that sort that I may have known about and with AI and with Google can find out, but hearing their stories and understanding how it applies to shops like mine is, it's priceless.
That's really a unique perspective that, again, I don't think many people would have the opportunity to grasp that. And, you're able to find not only friends, colleagues, mentors from these communities of people that you get to connect with. So, kudos to you for being involved in them, in addition to everything else that you are doing as well. Um, if you had to define what drives success, as somebody who's been successful in these two companies, what would you say at the end of the day it comes down to?
So, under the umbrella of contentness, just having inner peace and knowing you're not completely in control, and having that tawakkul. When you get to that point, which I am so like, that needle keeps moving in the right direction for me, and I'm so grateful for that because you never can check it off. You can never say, okay, I'm good, and nothing's going to hurt me. Nothing's going to threaten me. There's always something, right, that's going to trigger, or that you're going to be in a situation that you just don't know what to do, or it frustrates you. But then just going back to that and just saying, how good do I have it? How bad do others have it? And having that gratitude, under the umbrella of contentness, under the umbrella of tawakkul, and knowing that I'm doing everything I can and I'm taking everything as seriously as possible, but also in the same time having fun. I'd like to come in and with my team, and we joke, we have meetings, like, talk about, I'm like, one of your bullets are to hear about my grandkids. So let me tell you, like on your job descriptions, it's on there. It might be in, the font might be really small, but it's in there. And we joke about that. And we joke about like, and I know their stories as well. And I get to know my team members. And although like almost all of them are not Muslims, so we're like family. And
Mhm.
coming in and coming to a company, coming into both companies every day because I want to. I could sell these companies. I could retire. I don't need a lot of money to retire. And I would be fine for the rest of my life. I just turned 56. But that's not what I want. That's not my succession plan right now. My succession plan is having good health, inshallah, and just staying alive and active and engaged and making impacts every day. And so, to answer your question, I would say, in one hand, having contentness for what I have, but also thriving and moving that needle to make impacts, whether it's on my team, my local community, Muslims, abroad, the industry that I work in, but leaving an impact. And that's the goal, is when I'm not here, that some people will think back and say, wow, she was good. She was kind to us. She was fair. She did the right thing. Difficult decisions, she would look at the core values and refer to them and not her pocketbook. That's what I want. That's success.
That's really inspiring, and some elements on gratitude, impact. I'd love to hear more in terms of, that's the business side of things, but then when it comes to philanthropy engaging the community, giving back. Um, these elements of business success allow you to have more philanthropic impact as well. So can you share a little bit about some of your favorite projects that you've been part of?
The first project that I witnessed that inspired me to be who I am today was back in 1980. I was in Yemen, and my grandfather, Abi Yusuf Saleh, my mom's father, every day would walk in Aden, in the streets of Yemen, and see a Somalia woman. And she had her dry breast hanging with her newborn in her arm. And every day he would give her a shilling. And me, the entitled American who was visiting, by day 5 realized 5 shillings we could have bought in a doll, because there was like girls under the like on the first floor always selling dolls, and we couldn't afford it. And we would have half a chicken, the 7 of us in the house, for the main meal, which was lunch, with a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of rice and a little potatoes. And at night, we would have bread with boiled milk, like powdered milk. And the bread I thought was sesame, and it turned out to be bugs, because my grandfather couldn't afford regular bread, so he would buy the less expensive bread, which had bugs in it. And so, in my mind, day 5, 5 shillings to this complete stranger. I looked at my grandfather and I'm like, why would you give your money away when you're poor? And this, I would say, Mahi, was the most impactful moment of my life. Seriously. He looked at me, and I still tear up when I think of him. And I think of that moment. He looked at me and he said, in Arabic, he said, Ummi wa abi, min hu al-faqir. I said to him, why would you give your money away when you're poor? His response was, Ummi wa abi is like mother and father, but it's like a form of like affection, right? And
Mm-hmm.
he says to me, who's poor? Is there, and then he goes on to say, is there something that you need? Is there something that, and in that moment, I thought he was delusional. Like, how can you not know that you're poor? You're eating bread with bugs. We have half a chicken. There's 7 of us in the house. And you're thinking you're not poor? But what he had was the definition of success, contentness. And what he also realized, it didn't matter if she was Yemeni, if she was an Arab, if she was whatever. She was a woman in need, a Somalia, not from our village, not from our family, not even from our country. And he showed her empathy. He showed her compassion. And he told me, it is our responsibility to give. We cannot go to our homes and eat lunch when she can't feed her baby. That did not resonate at the time, but later in life, in my 20s, it did. And it hit me hard, actually, and it still hits me hard. And I always say, whatever, all the mentors, my parents, everyone that I've met throughout my 56 years is in one hand, and my grandfather is in the other. That's the level of impact that he has left on me. And I give in his name. Indonesia, when after tsunami, we dug wells in his name. We went to Africa and did food drives and passed out 1,000 goats in Niger in his name. We've built mosques in his name. And we continue to give in his name, because he is the one that gave me that compass, and not knowing at the time what of an impact he had left on me.
That's really wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, for somebody like yourself, when you are doing these projects in his name, in his memory, um, what's most important to you? Like, are you working with organizations and on the ground with them while they do it? Are you that involved, or do you like to see projects taking place and knowing that they have, um, been accomplished? How involved do you like to be in the philanthropy?
Well, I've been involved on every level. I've been as distant as just writing a check, like many of us do, and aren't capable of going to countries and seeing firsthand. And I've been in the caves of the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan, passing out food in the middle of the night.
Mm,
So I've seen both sides, and I love being the interacting with those. I even in Niger, I went one year. I went in 2006. I think it was July of 2006, and then 2 years, then again in 2008. And I went the same road and came out of my car, saw some people, stopped to give money and food, and they said, Aneesa. And I could not believe that
hmm.
they were the same people that we saw 2 years ago and that she remembered my name. So
Wow.
that impact, I get to have that, right? Like they all have their lives, and I could give, and they're fine for a little bit, but they deal with it day in and day out. I get a little bit of a window to their lives, come back inspired by them, by what they go through, how they feel. Like after tsunami in Indonesia, I would go to camps, and like these children have lost their families, their homes, and they're reciting Quran, and they're better than Arabs, and it was just like that's just so beautiful. So seeing it firsthand, I think we take for granted not knowing and not seeing. And now with social media, I think we've all seen Gaza, we've all seen, what's going on. But we get to turn it off, and we get to go home, and we get to have a good night's sleep when they have to deal with it. So for me, I need to be like on ground just to see some of it and to do what I can. If I've inspired one little girl, that what's possible, right?
Hmm.
But then also, like I sit on the board of Med Global currently, and I've been part of Rice for Yemen, and we
Hmm.
went on a medical mission a couple of years ago there. And with Med Global, it's very diversified. Everybody from Ukraine to Colombia to Mexico to Gaza to Syria to Yemen, and many, many more, in Pakistan. And so it's really good to see that level of diversification, and especially in philanthropy, and especially in medical, because everyone deserves, healthcare. Everyone deserves to be
Right.
treated, especially in war-torn countries. So being part of that, being the current treasurer and part of the executive committee, that's a huge honor. And getting to see, where the money goes, where the grants are coming from, when the fundraising, and seeing the behind the scenes of all the hard work of the Med Global team members, that's also inspiring, right? To those that are doctors that are, could be making a lot of money at a hospital, but choose to go for 2, 3 weeks in war-torn countries, jeopardizing their safety. And knowing that and seeing that on a spreadsheet. For me, not a doctor, but in being able to support someone like that, that's all very inspiring. This coming December, I'm going to Yemen for the first time for an entire month since I was a little girl. As an adult,
Wow.
I've never been there for more than 2 weeks. And so it'll be during the holidays. So we're shutting down for 2 weeks anyway. And then an additional 2 weeks will allow me to go really see what Med Global is doing and visit family and be able to, see my homeland as well. So yeah, I like to be part of every aspect, but I want to be part of something only if I'm bringing value. I don't want to get in the way. Like I could easily go in with Med Global and as a volunteer and go to these countries, but I know I'm probably just going to be in the way. So if I feel like I can bring value, if there's some tasks that I can do as a CEO or as just someone just, filing papers or giving out tickets or putting the band-aids in order, whatever that is, it's uh, humbling, but at the same time, extremely inspiring to see those there on the field doing the work and those that are in so much need.
Hmm. Um, Now, with Yemen in particular, with the war happening there, um, and even just your family history over the years, how have you seen the community there, or even the town and village that your family grew up in, transform over the years?
Our village has not been, it's most of Yaphet. I don't want to say hasn't been impacted. Everything has been impacted. And I think that the just people that don't have anyone that has migrated to other countries are the ones that are facing the most challenges because they don't have a way of earning an income that can feed their families. There's
Mhm.
just no way. And so that's what's really sad. But typically in Yaphet, my family, the people that I know, are fine. There's really nothing to complain about. Everyone's building big homes there, including myself, in our valleys, in our mountains, which is beautiful. And it gives us an opportunity to go back and bring our children and live under, you know, circumstances that we feel that we can live. But then when you go to in the streets or the villages that have been impacted, then you see such poverty and you see people just, just struggling to survive.
Mhm. Um, in terms of, thank you for sharing a few examples of, some of the charitable work that you've done and some of the organizations that you've been associated with. Um, in terms of, you know, projects that are meaningful to you in the US, are you doing anything locally where your businesses are, where you've been able to earn your wealth and status? Do you do any projects locally in the US as well?
I've volunteered many times with the Red Cross. We've gone to anything from locally here to Texas to Oklahoma. I haven't done that in a while. I do remember, it's so funny because, you know, when you go to some of the states and cities and they've never seen anyone that looked like me, or they've seen us, but they just don't want to.
Sure.
You walk in and you're there to help and they don't want your help. And then by the time you leave, they're hugging you and thanking you. So seeing that transformation has always been extremely rewarding. And it's like I never push myself on anyone. I, try to bring such a positive attitude, especially when they're going through their struggles. I'm not there for them to, work with me. I'm just there to help. And so being kind of like from the distance and then also being able to help. There was this one woman, so ironic. There was flooding here a few years back, and they had moved the people from their homes into a school. And so that was, I believe that was Red Cross that I was volunteering with. And so I was the night shift. And so the woman did not want, I asked her if she wanted dinner. She's like, I don't want anything from you. And I'm like, oh, that's fine. And then I asked someone else to go ask her. And then she got dinner. And then I was sitting next to her. And then I was just saying, oh my God, like I was showing her photos of my grandmother, who ironically she resembled. My grandmother was very fair skinned. And she was very beautiful. And this woman was beautiful, but she was kind of hard inside. But by the end of the night, and when I ended up leaving, she was asleep, and then they called me and asked me to come back because she wanted me. She didn't want anyone else. Now, did I
Mhm.
do anything profound? No. I just listened to her. I just shared some stories and I just put my ego down, put that away. So I feel like when we volunteer, there's going to always be the naysayers. There's always going to be the haters. There's always going to be someone or many sometimes, unfortunately, that are like, what are they doing here? What is she doing here? But if my intention is rida Allah, right? And to give back to humanity, no matter what humanity looks like, then I need to just remind myself of those intentions and go with the flow and let people see who I am, sometimes indirectly.
Very powerful example. I worked with the American Red Cross, so I'm very familiar with how some of these shelters are set up and the people who are affected coming in under, anxious circumstances, not knowing where to go, but really having to rely on going to a shelter to get basic needs. So, kudos to you for keeping your calm in a scenario in which it could have felt directed at you in many ways. What would you have to say to, as you have grandkids and kids of your own, what advice do you have for the next generation who are coming into these positions of wealth and through their own businesses and looking for places to give back to? What's some advice that you have for them?
So I think first and foremost is having a foundation of values. And from those values, what's important to you? Like what missions are important to you? What initiatives are out there that you want to be part of? So like outreach isn't a verb, but it's one of our values. And so and outreach isn't business development. Outreach is giving back, whether it's canned foods or toy drives or having students come and visit or going to Feed My Starving Children or other organizations that are, feeding children worldwide. And a bunch of us will go volunteer on company time. So, and inspiring the team, right? Even like uh, getting your blood drawn, like just those initiatives, right? You
Mhm.
could do the smallest thing and have the biggest impact on someone's life. You just never know. So just really being involved enough with outside your four walls. And so that way you're aware of what's going on in your community, your local community. Start with that. I would suggest always the local community. And then, broaden it up as you like. I remember, back in the day, I used to, when I was able to take the time off, we go to third world countries. Now, now I'm going to Yemen. I haven't gone on a trip like this in a while. I've gone to Yemen several times, but not to like, Niger was the last time I went to Niger was I think 2014. That was more than 10 years ago. So even though I'm in constant communication with them and remember them and in my sadaqah, but I also want to be part of that, right? I want to see firsthand, but I
Mhm.
can't leave my business and say, you know what, I'm going to go off there and jeopardize the livelihood of my team because that's my first amana.
Sure.
So it's always inspiring to do that and to go on trips. And but I would go local, and I would also look at seeing like within your organization, your employees, do they feel like you care? Because if I'm going to go outside and others are going to be like, wow, Aneesa's such a kind person, but you ask one of my employees and say, my husband had cancer and she didn't care. I needed more PTO and she didn't care. Things like that. Do you know what's
Sure.
going on, with your employees and their families? And have you supported them in ways that may be easy for you, but really profound for them? That's the questions that you should be asking as a leader.
Love that reminder. So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about your grandkids. So tell us a little bit
Wow.
more about some things you love about them.
I love everything about they're angels. They're perfect. So I have grandchildren from the age of 19 all the way down to 18 months old.
Wow.
Noor is second year at UIC. She's going into the dental track. She's also a big advocate. She's out there always protesting. And what I love about her is that she's out there protesting for people that look like her and people that don't look like her. And that's extremely inspiring for me as well. And Ibrahim is going to be 18 next month. He's got his own car now. He's going into he's a first year at UIC as well, and he's going into mechanical engineering. Both of my grandchildren have grown up on my shop floor. Noor has done a lot of our photography. Ibrahim has done everything from inspecting parts to working with the engineers to running machines with the guys and passing out water bottles when he was 7 years old and taking out the garbage. So it's important to keep them humble, but also empower them, right? And then my other son has those are Omar, my older son's children. My younger son, who is going to be 36 January, his daughter's going to be 7, Suraya. Yaqub is going to be 6, and Gamila is currently 18 months old, going to be 2 in March. And let me tell you, those are the ones that keep me humble, because now I'm 56, and when I had the first batch of grandkids, I could hold them both in at the same time. Now it's like I'm lucky to just have one. But I did take them recently, the three of them, to this bouncy place. I can't even remember the name. And Gamila, who's 18 months old, going on 30, she knows her worth. She's very confident, mashallah. I don't know where she gets it from. And so she wanted to play with her siblings, so I had to hold her to climb up those whatever they call that, playstations, and that was like,
Full
yeah,
body
I was
workout.
like, yeah, it was a full, yeah, it was like going to Spenga. But yeah, it was a lot of work, but my God, I had them for 5 hours, and it was just amazing. And so they all make me proud. And I hope that I'm creating a legacy that they're proud of. And they're certainly part of that.
Wonderful. I appreciate you taking time to share with our listeners more about yourself, more about the philanthropy that you do, and even about the grandkids. So, is there any
Yeah.
last thing that you'd like to share with us that you didn't have an opportunity to talk about?
Yeah, not really. I think you've touched on pretty much everything. I'm inspired by your work about, getting the message out. And I think it's so important that we're advocates of each other in our community. And earlier you were thanking me, and I said, this is obviously an important topic. There's always a million things to do. My desk is like, you can't see it, but it's got piles of things to do. But I would say that let's treat each other with respect and open up doors for each other and help each other and support each other in ways that many people do for one another, and especially for the ummah.
Inshallah, I mean, thank you so much, Anissa, for your time and really appreciate the message you had to share.
Thank you.